Let's talk some Torah. Parshat YITRO, which we've been talking about all week, is the moment where we stand at the mountain and we receive the Torah. It's revelation. If you remember, there's a very, very famous Mel Brooks scene in History of the World where Moses ascends the mountain and he comes down and he's carrying tablets and he says, "Here I bring you the 15," and then one tablet falls down. 10 commandments. And those commandments include 5 on one tablet, 5 on the other, at least the way we typically envision it. And those tablets inscribed by the finger of God, as we are told, are lists of things to do and things not to do. The lists of things to do, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekodsho, remember the Shabbat and keep it holy, or make it holy, which is a fascinating idea, that we can make time holy. We can. Look what we do every day. Kabet et avicha v'et imecha, honor your parents, naming both. Please God. Anochi Adonai Elohecha is an interesting one. I am the Lord your God. That doesn't sound like a command. It sounds like a, here I am. But okay. But we have lots of do nots. Lo tisa shem Adonai Eloheinu lashav. Don't take God's name in vain. Don't swear falsely in God's name. Don't covet. Don't steal. Lo tirtzach. Don't murder. All of these are fascinating blends of things to do and things not to do. What if we only had the positives? What if we only had the do? Well, it would look very different. And what I want to ask, and I have certain things in my mind, I'll share one of them in a moment. What would happen if we didn't have constraints? What would the world look like? What would tradition look like? What would humanity look like if we didn't have the do-nots, the limitations? Some of those limitations are mysterious, in terms of the kosher keeping laws, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. There's no reason offered for that, and there probably is no rational, logical reason. Those are tribal, mysterious rules. Okay, let's accept those. What about the ones that seem to have a reason? What is the reason for a do not? Well, let's use an obvious example. What would highways look like if there were no speed limits? And there was no enforcement of the speed limits. What would the world look like if we didn't have the notion that this sanctified relationship precludes me going somewhere else with sexual acts, with intimate acts? What would the world look like without boundaries? The do-nots actually hold us safe. They hold us steady. If all we had were the do's and no limits, yes, on a certain level, that would sound really interesting, but it would be chaos if there were no limits. As Rabbi Cantor Risa writes, it would be more of a balagan. We do need structure in our lives. The Kabbalists suggest, mystics suggest, that there are balancing aspects of the divine. If you ever look at the very strange charts of the Sfirot, the spheres that seem to channel God's emanation, it's a very interesting part of Jewish thought. There is on one side Rachamim and one side Din. Din is law, judgment, what we would call structure, and Rachamim means the womb-like, the emotional, what we sometimes call chesed, even though that's also another sphere. The balancing basically between love and structure. What would the world look like if it were only structure? There'd be no reason for the world, say the rabbis. What would the world look like if it was only love, only chesed, only rachamim? The world would dissolve. And so chesed, love, compassion, gives us the why behind the world. But without the how, the why would just flutter away or dissolve. So all week long, I've been discussing this very interesting new technology. ChatGPT is one version of artificial intelligence. And I used it in the last week to publish a book that I'm now holding in my hands called the AI Torah Commentary. Very strange thing that I've done. In it, I channeled, I used the technology, which you can prompt to do anything, to write commentaries on the Torah in the styles of people like Stephen Sondheim, Emma Lazarus, Descartes, Yoda. And it did a very interesting job. There is a lot of debate about whether or not this is a good idea, but it's out there, and I wanted to experiment with it. I even had it write a reflection on AI, on artificial intelligence, in the style of Rabbi Menachem Creditor, and it got it pretty right. Not only that, I had it write a blessing for wisdom. Listen to this blessing that it wrote in the style of me. May the light of wisdom shine within each of us, guiding us towards compassion and truth. May we embrace our own unique journeys and support each other as we strive towards growth and enlightenment. May the wisdom we seek be revealed to us in unexpected ways, and may we always have the courage to follow its call. Amen. And by the way, Deborah, just so you know, you would include Winnie the Pooh. This is a volume on Genesis. The volume on Exodus is coming out next week, and the final comment is by Eeyore, actually. The reason why I share this is because I could prompt that AI chatbot to write anything from any perspective. I got into an interesting debate with a colleague yesterday about how strange this is, and maybe it's not good. Maybe it's a bad idea. Well, we don't know yet, actually. I don't think the small scope of this very small book is going to have an impact on anybody, please God, but it is a fascinating way to learn about the technology and maybe even deepen our understanding of Torah. I have a comment by Gene Wilder, one by Stephen Sondheim, one by Mr. Spock. And some of it's interesting. Bella Abzug, a very famous early 20th century labor activist, critiques the patriarchy of Joseph and Jacob and sees the early feminism of Tamar. It's fascinating to see what's here. But what the AI cannot do is place a limit. So the debate that I got into with a colleague last night, he was wondering the wisdom about all this. And he said, could you have the AI write a commentary on the Christian Gospels in the voice of Rabbi Abram Joshua Heschel? And I said, well, sure you could. Why wouldn't you? So he did it, and he showed me what it looked like, which was Rabbi Heschel sounding like he believed in Christianity, which of course he did not. He was an interfaith activist and a firm Jew, obviously. But what's also interesting is then to counter my friend's critique, I then looked at whether or not Rabbi Heschel would have something to say about the anti-Semitism that is latent within aspects of the Christian Bible. And, in fact, the AI generated Rabbi Heschel's voice critiquing authentically the problems within the Christian Bible. We can use the tool for anything, but it does not necessarily understand itself, and it won't say no. There are limits, actually, to what it would say. I, for fun, asked it to reflect on the State of the Union in my voice. What does Rabbi Menachem Creditor think about President Biden's State of the Union? And it did not give me an answer. I actually posted a graphic of the answer on my social media where it basically said, people disagree even within one faith about politics, and so I don't have an answer. I did challenge it to write something that it said no to. It's a very powerful thing. I don't know how to really process this, but we're the kind of community that has shared the process of things quite a lot, and especially in a moment like this when we are about to approach Mount Sinai, standing there trying to receive Torah, knowing that there are some things to do, some things not to do, meaning there are limits and there is love. And I asked ChatGPT to write an apology in the name of Heinrich Himmler, who was one of the architects of the Nazis' plan. And it said, I refuse. It said, I cannot speak to the moral voice of this. I don't remember exactly the way it said no, but it said no in a way that was actually very impactful to me. We're going to have to work very hard to make sure that the artificial intelligence that makes so many of these things surprisingly accessible is not taken as truth. It's more like a paintbrush. Who's holding the paintbrush? The kind of questions you ask will generate certain kinds of answers, which means we're going to have to work very hard. We're going to have to work very hard to make our questions better, to have our curiosity and our intelligence and our moral sensibility come into contact with revelation. In fact, as Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel actually said about this moment at the mountain, he said, as a report on revelation, the Torah itself is an act of midrash. Midrash, which means Jewish legends, is also Midrash is the act of searching for meaning. This is a process of meaning making. It's not an answer to anything. And so I encourage us to think hard about the questions that we ask, maybe to experiment with this AI or another AI that might come out, and see what we can generate and try to use it for good. A paintbrush can create art if an artist is holding it. AI can generate interesting meanings if meaningful questions are asked. It's just a tool, just like every other tool. And so the real question is, can you and I follow what Rabbi Heschel did teach in his final interview with Carl Stern on NBC just weeks before Heschel died in 1972? Carl Stern, conducting the interview, asked Heschel in this final question, do you have something you'd like to say to the youth? And Heschel said, remember to make your life a work of art. Only you, friends, can ask the questions that lead life to be beautiful. I want to bless you. I want to bless you not to become swallowed up in the hype around AI, but to think about what it is to be human, which is after all the point. To stand at the mountain, knowing that your act of searching, the search for meaning, the quest for meaning that Viktor Frankl, who wrote among the most important of books, Man's Search for Meaning, whose voice, by the way, I tried to channel as a comment here. His real voice sounds so human. This is the work of a soul. This is not. We should work hard, not be afraid, but we should work hard to hear with human ears, and to live with a human soul, and to learn with human curiosity, and use the tools at our disposal to make life better for others. I bless you, friends, this Shabbat at the mountain. Open your hearts. God speaks in infinite ways. What are you going to hear this time? How are you going to process it through your human soul? How will you share it with somebody else? Let's have a good Shabbos, everybody. Let's sing our way into it.
Alive.
Shabbat Shalom, friends. Have a really beautiful one. See you on Monday.